Hello crew, welcome back. All right, in this video I'm going to show you basically what you've learned so far in this particular module, lesson 2, where you're learning how to create collections and collection sets. And then more importantly, I'm going to show you how to export your selected images, the images that you'll be submitting for your first assignment, which is image submission set 1. There are a minimum requirement as far as how many images you will submit. You would have to just go into the assignment details to determine that number. But again, I want to point out that's just the minimum, which means you could submit more than the required amount that is being asked from you. Because of course, you might want more feedback on other images that perhaps kind of expands on your selections. And of course, it'll vary depending on the genre and theme of your portrait, and so that is totally understandable if you need to submit more than the requirement. All right, moving on. So here I did a recent shoot. Okay, so on the left hand side, of course, you'll see your folders panel, collections panel, which I have yet to establish a collection. Typically I'm just working off my folders. But I've been pointing out I'm definitely going to be adding more processes in my workflow, and one of them, of course, being creating collections. And so I'm going to go ahead and start by doing it on this particular gig that I did. And so let's just take a look. This includes everything, right? This is coming straight out of camera. Now I already did add some ratings to the various photos that stuck out to me. So as we're going along, I'll just go ahead and point that out. So if you look down the very bottom, I imported from my memory card 315 photos, which means in this photo session, I shot 315 photos. And when I imported my photos, I already started a new naming convention, right? Just like the book suggests. We start by the year, month, day, when it was shot. I'm including my name in the file name, as well as the individual that I photographed. And then, of course, I've also kept the original raw file number sequence. And I don't know, for some reason, I just prefer to have that number intact. But anyhow. All right, so at the bottom is your film strip. In the middle is your preview area. And on the right, you have your information panel, which includes your quick develop panel. If you need to make any quick adjustments, I typically don't make any adjustments to it at all. Typically, I'll go through my culling first, and then because I know the latitude that I have with my particular cameras that I photograph with, that they are extremely dynamic in the sense that, if they look way underexposed, I can definitely correct that. And I want to point out that it may not have been done by mistake. It may have been done from a technical perspective, intentional, because of how extreme the lighting conditions were for that particular shoot. That's like, for example, in this case, one of the images, a portion of I'll just show you here, one of the images, E for loop, so it kind of previews the entire image. So right, this is one of my test shots. But you can see, and the reason why I shot it like this, I need to gauge where my ambient light is hitting. Because this is in Midtown, there's a lot of trees. You won't necessarily get an even spread of light, and so you can see here, I like the characteristics of the light coming through. And so let me just show you something really fast. So if I correct this, highlight the sun hitting the face, this is probably along the lines of where I can have a better gauge as to, okay, where do I need to put my artificial light source? So I like the characteristics here going on in this gentleman's face. So that means I would need to bring a strobe to light the other subject in this photo. So anyway, let me backtrack. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to just point out in terms of the intentionally shooting it the way I needed to shoot it. I of course I wanted to shoot in this particular space because of the lines and just the characteristics of the backyard and the lighting and whatnot. So because of that, I already know the range that I can correct this in Lightroom. So anyway, all right, I started to dabble on again or babble on again as I always do. So let me just backtrack. So again, I have 315 photos. I want to narrow that down using the culling system that the author cites in his textbook. Right, you're going to be using a series of rejects and making your picks, and then using the star system to maybe indicate your least favorite to your most favorite. But since we're looking at one of my projects and I use my current method of rating, I'll just point that out. So in these 315 photos, I've already did the culling by, okay, if this make the cut, then I'll use 1-star rating. Okay, so let me just hit, oops, rated. So with the 1-star rating, and what I mean by that is when I look through the 315 photos, out of those 315 photos, there were only 80 that I thought were like, okay, these are good shots. Let's move on. And so that's what I did. So 80 made the cut out of 315 photos. And so that's kind of, what you should also expect with how you're shooting your midterm project, right? You're going to shoot about maybe anywhere, at least 200 photos for every time you head out and do your shoots. And out of those 200 photos, you're going to have a good number to narrow it down to. And they should just be the good ones, not necessarily the great ones that are like portfolio pieces, because you want to be able to evaluate those, but also have maybe your peers evaluate. And that's the whole purpose of this image submission set, is to get that feedback. Okay, so, and then I also rated the next best shots, and so I gave it a 2-star rating. So out of those 315 photos, with those that had the 2-star rating or above, there were 59 photos. If I rated a 3-star, then we're narrowing down to 17 photos, right? So it's like going from like good, better, best, and then awesome, right? That's kind of how I was using the star rating for my culling system. So looking here, those that had the 3 stars, I have 17 photos. That's simulating the set number of images that you'll be needing to submit for your first assignment, the image submission set 1. So here, if I wanted feedback from my classmates, I'm gonna submit all of these 17. So I would just export that. So to export that, it's as simple as selecting all your images. Okay, let me go back to the library module. You can either be in library module or develop module when you do the export. You can do by hitting, once you've highlighted all of them, right, make sure they're all lit up, and then you're gonna hit the export button right here. Or you can control right click on the film strip, and then you'll have this dialog box. Here at the very bottom, you'll also have an export option, file export. Or you can do it from the top, which is up here, file export. There are various ways to do that. But I find that since I'm already highlighting the image down here on the film strip, I just have a habit to just control right click on the images, and then I do export, file export, and then brings you up the export dialog box. Okay, now we are jumping ahead in the textbook with the export feature, so I'm just going to briefly touch on the export of JPEGs, which is the requirement for the assignment. Let's like, again, I also said that Lightroom works in a linear fashion in terms of your workflow, so we'll start from the top to bottom, and then left to right. That's kind of how I look at things. So under this export box, it's asking you, where do you want to put these JPEGs or the exported files? So you have a couple options here, but I like to put it in a specific folder where I tell it to. So I'm going to put specific folder, and then here right underneath it, you can tell it where to put it. So you click choose. It brings up either your Internet Explorer or your Mac Finder box, right? This is where you can navigate your folders outside of Lightroom. I'm going to go back to the parent folder of this project. And this parent folder, I called it 2021 underscore the month, the day, and then the person's name. So that's the same folder naming convention that the author uses. So in that parent folder, I already have some subfolders called proofs. So again, I'm jumping ahead because I already created a set of proofs for my client. I have my raw images in there. And now I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to kind of mimic how you would create a new folder for your image submission set. So I'm going to hit new folder, and I'm going to call it image submission set 1. And I'll hit create. So it created a subfolder in my parent folder. So if we take a look at what that looks like, so now I have my parent folder listed up top. I have 3 folders now as opposed to the 2 that I started off with. I have my new one listed, image submission set 1. So I'll just double click that to make sure that I'm in it. I'm going to hit choose. So now it brings you back to the main export box. And now it's indicating, okay, you're going to put it into your hard drive and then into the specific folder. So that's what it means by specific folder. Moving on. So file naming. Now I already did a naming convention during my import. So I typically would have had this checked to rename my file. But since I don't want to rename the file, I want to retain the original file name upon my import process. I'll just go ahead and uncheck that. Okay, my Lightroom just froze. And this is pretty typical. I'm not quite sure if this is a bug. This is a very new iMac. I just bought it beginning of the year, and so I'm not sure if there's a glitch. So I'm gonna have to restart my my Lightroom. So 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. All right, and we're back. So here I'm just gonna recap. I'm currently selecting I just currently created a folder to put my image submission set for your homework. And then I'm tasked to either rename my images, but I don't want to because I already created a proper naming convention using the author's methods in this book. So I'm gonna uncheck that. I don't want to rename it. I want to keep it as such. And it shows you the example here that it's currently showing my year, month, day, my name, and then whoever it is that I photographed. I'm gonna keep scrolling down. Here's where I need you guys to pay attention to is the file settings. You're going to be submitting a JPEG format, right? There's a couple of formats here for you to choose from, but you're going to just hit JPEG. Color space, okay? Your camera shoots Adobe RGB, at least that's what it should be. But if not, make sure you set that in your camera. And then when you export your images, you want to convert it to sRGB. And I'll go ahead and explain those 2 file formats in a later module. But for now, make sure that the color space is selected to sRGB. Okay, quality is set to 100. And then here is another important thing to watch out for is you need to resize these images. So basically, it's just downsizing your images. You want to say resize to fit. You want to select the long edge, which means it's the long edge of your image. And then set it to 1800 pixels. You can ignore this resolution part. We'll highlight this particular resolution entry in a later module when we're starting to create our print files. But for now, I want you to just make sure that it's properly set to long edge and then 1800 pixels. Okay. This also has a drop-down box, so you want to make sure it's set to pixels. And then for sharpen 4, I have been just setting depending on whether I'm printing or just creating a web image, I'll select screen. So for this assignment, go ahead and do screen, and then I just do standard. And then I also include all my metadata, and that's about it. Under post-processing, I have a tendency of, instead of saying do nothing, I have them show me those files in like the folder that I put it in, and that acts as like a confirmation to me that it's done exporting. Here is where your new images reside. So, okay, I'll just double check everything. Export location, I want to put it in this folder. I don't want to rename my files. My file settings or file format is proper. It's JPEG, sRGB. The image size is appropriate, 1800 pixels, and I did a little bit of sharpening. Then I feel comfortable. I'm going to hit export. Up top, on the top left, it has your progress bar. It says exporting 17 photos. And I'm just going to wait. And done. So it opened up the folder that I put it in, right? These are my exported images, exported copies that I made. And there are 17 photos. So I can preview them and just kind of go through them. You can see the file size here in the info tab or info box or window or panel, whatever you want to call it. They're just under 1.5 megabytes, right? So see 1 megabyte, 1.2, 1.2, 1.1. So these are images that are manageable all across platforms, from showing them on your social media, submitting them for assignments and stuff like that. So, well, there you go. So that is the export process. And if you have any questions, rewatch this video. But again, I want to stress this out. If you have any questions, please, y'all, you post them in the student discussion lounge. Don't send me an email about specific tasks or uncertainties of the assignment. If you put them in the discussion lounge, more than likely another classmate has a better interpretation of the response and they can respond to you. And I'm always moderating this. So if I happen to see a response that was wrong, then of course I'm going to chime in and correct everyone. So, but if no one has the answer for it, then of course I'm going to also respond to that in that fashion. All right, y'all, that wraps up this video. I'm looking forward to your first submission set. Thanks for watching.